Okay, let's just dive right into this. Welcome to today's explainer. We're going to tackle something that literally every single one of us has experienced, probably way more times than we'd care to admit, right? We're talking about social awkwardness, but more importantly, we're going to learn how to completely neutralize that painful, lingering sting that comes with it. And we're not just throwing out standard, run-of-the-mill advice here. No, we're combining ancient Stoic wisdom with modern psychology to fundamentally change how you experience those cringeworthy moments. So if you want to stop letting the fear of looking foolish hold you back, you are absolutely in the right place. Let's do this. Have you ever made a social blunder and felt like the entire world was staring and judging you? Picture this. You're on a crowded, super quiet flight. The drink cart rolls by and you ask for a simple ginger ale. But then, disaster strikes. Seconds later, your hand slips and you just knock the entire plastic cup completely over onto your lap. You're sitting there, soaking your own clothes while the people around you let out this collective, muffled chuckle. I mean, you feel like a little kid sitting in a kiddie pool. Your face turns incredibly hot, you feel like an absolute klutz, and you just have to settle in for a very long, very wet ride. Honestly, we have all been there. So what's actually happening in our brains during that excruciating moment? Well, embarrassment is this incredibly powerful, self-conscious emotion. It's actually in the exact same family as shame and guilt. That searing pain of public awkwardness, whether it's fumbling a presentation at work, walking around with a massive coffee stain on your shirt, or accidentally tossing highly sensitive documents into the recycling bin, it all stems from one terrifying thought. And that's the belief that other people are going to look down on us just because we failed to comply with some basic social norm. But hold on, I want to stop you right there with a massive reality check. Think about the last time you tripped in public. You were probably convinced the whole street was staring at you, right? Well, here is the brutal truth. Almost everyone is completely absorbed in themselves. Seriously, they're thinking about their own lives, their own problems, their own interests. They are definitely not obsessing over your spilled ginger ale. In fact, they probably forgot about it like 3 seconds after it happened. Which brings us to Section 1. The prison of shame and what happens when fear takes over. You see, while a spilled drink might just be a funny story you tell at dinner later, that underlying fear of embarrassment is actually deeply destructive. For a lot of people, this fear causes significant, sometimes paralyzing pain. Albert Ellis, who was this pioneering psychologist that founded rational emotive behavior therapy, he observed a massive problem here. He noted that what we call shame is actually the essence of a great deal of our emotional disturbance. When we're constantly, obsessively worried about whether we're blushing or sweating or if our hands are trembling, we develop this dangerous and completely unhealthy hyperfocus on ourselves. Psychologists actually have a name for this. It's called the spotlight effect. It's a cognitive bias where we falsely believe that we're the absolute center of everyone's attention. And because of this bias, it's wild. We start getting embarrassed about being embarrassed. We stop speaking up in meetings, we avoid networking events, or we shy away from meeting new people. We basically shrink our entire world down to this tiny, confined, safe little bubble, all just to avoid the perceived horror of looking silly. But hey, before you beat yourself up for having these reactions, look at this incredible evolutionary twist. Psychologist Ellen Hendrickson explains that embarrassment actually evolved as a nonverbal apology and a gesture of appeasement to the group. Because of this, and I love this fact, people who are easily embarrassed are actually viewed by others as nicer, more trustworthy, and way more generous. It's basically an evolutionary signal that you care about the social fabric. So that blush you absolutely hate, it's actually making people trust you more. And the ancients, they understood this beautifully. The ancient Cynic philosopher Diogenes once saw a young man blushing furiously. And instead of mocking him, he just said, "Take courage, that's the hue of virtue." I absolutely love how this directly contrasts our modern, anxiety-ridden fear of blushing with the ancient world's reverence for it. To them, it was literally a sign of good character. All right, let's jump into Section 2, the Stoic solution, a foolproof framework. So since we can't just magically eradicate this natural human response, let's use a 4-part structured framework to stop it from ruining our lives. Step 1, accept your nature. Step 2, shift focus to service. Step 3, attack your shame. And step 4, laugh it off. Let's break down exactly how you can apply each of these, starting right now. Okay, step 1 is to accept your nature. This taps directly into the Stoic dichotomy of control. Nearly 2,000 years ago, the Stoic philosopher Seneca pointed out that even the greatest, most powerful Romans suffered from uncontrollable physical reactions. For example, he noted that Pompey the Great, this incredible, legendary military leader, he always blushed when he appeared before a public assembly. And the great Fabianus, he reddened whenever he appeared as a witness before the Senate. You see, Seneca understood a really fundamental truth here. Some bodily reactions simply cannot be shaken off by mental training. Nature will always exert her power, even over the absolute strongest individuals. So the goal isn't to completely eliminate the blush, or the sweat, or the stutter. The goal is to accept these reactions without getting into a massive, stressful mental conflict over them. The very moment you accept your body's natural response, you instantly strip away all that exhausting anxiety of trying to hide it. Now let's move to step 2, which is to shift your focus to service. You know, when we feel awkward at a social gathering, the gravitational pull of me is incredibly powerful. We obsess over how we look, how we sound, how we're performing, but the ultimate Stoic hack to cure this paralyzing self-consciousness is to forcibly shift your attention outward. So, say you're at a party and you feel that familiar sense of dread creeping in. You can completely shatter this spotlight effect. Just make your entire evening about helping other people feel comfortable. Ask them questions. Listen carefully to the details of their lives. Try to make them smile. By actively focusing on the needs and comforts of others, you completely break that self-obsessed cycle of anxiety. And honestly, your embarrassment practically evaporates. All right, step 3, and this one is incredibly fun. Attack your shame. Back around 300 BC, Zeno, the guy who would actually go on to found Stoicism, he was studying under a philosopher named Crates. Well, Crates noticed that Zeno was just far too modest. He cared way too much about what society thought of him. So Crates forced Zeno to carry this heavy bowl of lentil soup right through a crowded, bustling district in Athens. Zeno was so embarrassed that he tried to hide the bowl under his robes. Seeing this, Crates took his walking stick and just smashed the bowl, spilling thick lentil soup all over Zeno's bare legs. As Zeno ran away in absolute mortification, Crates yelled after him, "Why run away, my little Phoenician? Nothing terrible has happened to you." Now, that ancient and, pretty messy lesson actually directly inspired the psychologist we mentioned earlier, Albert Ellis, to create what he called shame-attacking exercises for his modern patients. Ellis would actually have his clients deliberately act shamefully in public. Why? To prove to their own brains that nothing terrible actually happens when strangers judge them. I mean, he would assign them ridiculous tasks, like tying a red ribbon around a banana and walking it down a busy city street like a dog. Or he'd tell them to step into a crowded elevator and stand perfectly still, just facing the back wall. Or simply yell out the current time in the middle of a crowded grocery store. I know, you're probably thinking, why on earth would anyone do this? Well, because intentionally putting yourself in ridiculous, embarrassing situations helps you neurologically separate your specific, quirky behavior from your actual worth as a human being. The Stoic teacher Epictetus taught that if you truly want to make progress in life, you just have to put up with being thought foolish and silly. By practicing these harmless little shame attacks, you effectively inoculate yourself against the fear of judgment. It's like a vaccine for embarrassment. And that brings us to the final step in our framework, laugh it off. Look, when you inevitably trip over your own shoelaces or you spill that ginger ale all over yourself on the airplane, the absolute best, most liberating response is to simply laugh at yourself. Seneca actually pointed out a brilliant comparison here. When dealing with the ridiculous follies of life, we have a choice. We can imitate the philosopher Epictetus, right? He was famous for laughing whenever he went out in public because he just saw the absurdity in everything. Or we can imitate Heraclitus, who famously wept and agonized over the flaws of humanity. When you really look at this comparison, it forces you to realize that it's far more civilized and, honestly, way better for our own mental health to just make fun of life rather than bewail it. All right, section 3, conclusion, reframing adversity. Let's wrap this up. The ultimate cure for embarrassment really just comes down to how you frame your setbacks. The popular podcaster and former Navy SEAL Jocko Willink has this famously simple one-word response to literally any failure or setback he encounters. He just says, "Good." Did you screw up a presentation at work? Good. You can join the rest of the human race and practice some self-compassion. Did you spill ginger ale all over yourself on a crowded airplane? Good. You just got a completely free opportunity to practice patience and cope with adversity in real time. And this modern mindset, it perfectly echoes the ancient Roman emperor Marcus Aurelius. He constantly reminded himself that when something happens to you, it is good because it was meant for you by nature, woven into the pattern of your life from the very beginning. We really need to stop trying to be perfect. Perfection is a total myth. Accept your blunders, laugh warmly at your own mistakes, and just stop letting that exhausting fear of looking foolish keep you from living a bold, full life. So I'll leave you with this provocative thought to chew on. What is your most embarrassing moment, and how are you choosing to reframe it and laugh at it today? The next time you find yourself turning bright red, just remember the framework. Accept your nature, shift your focus outward to others, embrace the silliness of it all, and just laugh. You've got the tools now to walk through the world with unshakable confidence. Thanks so much for joining me on this explainer, and I can't wait to dive into our next topic with you.